Hey kids, guess who? Got some stuff to lay on you. It's Friday morning, about 11:30 here in Indiana. That means it's about 8:30 in California. I want to talk a little bit about the drafts and other things that you're doing this week. But please pay attention to this video. I've got several things I'm going to lay on you. First off, in terms of questions that you want to ask me, you're perfectly free to ask questions of me at any time and any place. But if you email me your questions, then I have to find them in my email box and I have to write a reply directly back to you. And then if someone else has the same question, we have to engage in the whole process over and over again. I know sitting where you're sitting and sitting where I'm sitting, it's looking like there's just you and me, but in fact there's me and about 120 of you. So let me ask you one more time to think about the nature of the question you're going to ask. If it is a question you would ask in the classroom in front of your other colleagues, then ask it in the general questions forum so I can answer it there once for everybody. By all means, if it's something personal that you wouldn't feel comfortable asking in a classroom, then send me a private email and I'll get to answer it eventually. But if it's a question you'd ask in a classroom, then ask it in our classroom, which is the forum. So you'll get an answer much more quickly, and it's quite possible that one of your colleagues even knows the answer before I even get there to answer it. So again, please use the general questions forum for general questions. And you can tell whether it's a question you'd feel comfortable asking in a classroom or not. If it is a question you'd be comfortable asking, then ask it in the general questions forum. It goes so much better and so much quicker. All right. Got an email this morning asking what happens if no one reviews your draft. That will happen, unfortunately, and I got a couple of responses to that. There will be people who wait until the last possible minute to do a draft or not do a draft at all, and those people simply won't be available at all to this process, and the folks who have already done drafts will tend to do them earlier in the week and then pair up and get the job done earlier in the week because they've got the job done. So you may end up toward the end of the week with someone who, with a draft that you can't find anyone to review. So here are a couple of options. First off, you're welcome to review more than one draft. And I'll even figure out a way, if you review more than one, I'll figure out a way to give you a little bit of extra credit for reviewing more than one. We just have to figure out how you demonstrate to me that you've done more than one, but that ought to be an easy thing to figure out. So if you've already reviewed someone's and you want to review somebody else's, by all means. This is about helping each other out. It's not about getting credit. It's about creating knowledge as a community, and the more involved everybody is, the more knowledge and the better quality knowledge we create. It's that simple. Yes, there will be, the people that we're going to be dragging along either because they're not really interested or whatever reasons they come up with, and those people are inevitable. They're going to be there, but we don't have to let them affect our creation of knowledge and our moving forward as a human race. Okay, so there's that. So do more than one if you want. Let me know that you've done more than one, and then we'll figure out some way to verify that, and I'll give you a little extra credit. Okay. The second thing is, and I meant to mention this earlier in the week, don't forget the Academic Skills Center on campus. It's over behind, sort of near the gym. If you walk along the inside of the sciences building, the human sciences building, right, straight back there. I think it has a T on it, but I can't remember. Anyway, it's called the Academic Skills Center. There are tutors available there. You can pretty much walk in and get help. They have copies of both the prompt for the essay and my syllabus. So when you go in there, tell them you're working on, in my class, on whatever essay you're working on. By the way, I'm sending this video to both my classes, so it will apply to both classes, both my English 1A and my English 1B. So go use the Academic Skills Center. You can work with a tutor. They will help a lot, and they'll know exactly what to look for because they have copies of the prompt and the syllabus. It is not their job to fix your paper. It's their job to show you how to fix it for yourself. But there are two options. Review more than one if you want. Review as many as you like. And if you don't want to do that or can't do that, visit the Academic Skills Center. I don't know what the hours are this term, but you'll find it on the website. Okay, so there's a couple of options if you can't find anybody to review your paper. The other thing about reviewing papers in using the forums, there was a very specific reason why I asked you to exchange drafts by email. A number of you have chosen not to do that, and you're posting your drafts in the forum. And what that means is it's very likely that no one will review your paper because they can't have a copy to work with. The reason you exchange by email, the reason I asked you to do that, is so your colleague will actually have a copy on their desktop, which they can then manipulate by using the track changes function, and they can interact with your paper much more effectively. Chances are, if you just upload it on the forum and don't follow the directions I sent, you're not going to get much feedback at all, or not much quality feedback. Okay. Again, this was a situation where I made very clear directions, and then someone decided to do it another way, and then a lot of people followed that person rather than following the directions I sent. That's your choice. It's not a big deal, but the quality of your feedback, if you do it that way, will not be nearly as good as if you physically exchange either by email or, even better, in person. And there was a reason why I made that page and a half of directions for you. All right. Emails. I noticed that some of you are exchanging to your personal emails on Google and Hotmail and other places. That's fine, but I would recommend that you use your MyCOD email, because that system is discrete and it lives at COD, which means if things get screwed up, it's easier to track things down. I will never communicate with you at any email other than your MyCOD one, because for those reasons. So you do whatever you want, of course, but if you can remember in future, it's better to use your MyCOD email. What else? Oh, someone asked, first person or third person? It doesn't matter to me. I prefer first person most of the time. There will be professors you'll encounter in college who will say absolutely no first person, use only third person. It's really up to you, but the problem with first person is a matter of diction. Sometimes first person is a little too informal. You all are a little bit ahead of the curve here. I hadn't planned on talking about diction probably for a week or two, but if your paper sounds or feels too informal, then its credibility suffers, and that's a risk of first person. The risk of third person is that it can sound really stuffy and like there's nobody there, and that tends to bore readers. So I can't tell you first or third personally. I use first person almost all the time, except when I'm writing for something extremely formal. So the best way to do it is to write with what's comfortable for you, and then if your reviewer or somebody else says it's too informal, then you can go back in and change it. That's not a big deal. It's easy to change first person to third if you need to. It's not so easy to do the other way. So my suggestion is write it in first person, see how it sounds, see how it feels, and then make the necessary changes. That's not hard to do, and it doesn't take long. What else? Let's see. I have my little note here. Okay. Most of your papers and drafts that I've looked at, and I have read everything you've posted in the forums this week so far, we need to work on introductions and thesis statements. And so I've put up on the forum, or in the resources section today, there's a new folder called Writing How-Tos, HOW-TO. And in there are some resources. I wouldn't worry an awful lot about all of them. They've been on other places on the website, but I just gathered them up for you today, so they'll be in one location. However, there's some information in there on how to write an introduction, and I think pretty much everybody ought to read that. The purpose of an introduction is it introduces your subject to your reader. It's your first and possibly your only chance to create interest. So the best thing to think about in writing an intro is to think of something universal. Now I'm going to speak for a moment to my English 1A class. You're summarizing that article out of the New York Times, and so you could say something like, many people are thinking about what college is worth, or what the purpose of college is. Some people think this way, other people think that way. This man in the article in the New York Times suggests this solution. So you go, the thing has kind of a V structure. Okay? The risk of of not having an introduction is you lose 10 points right off the bat, which may or may not matter to you. But the risk in not having an introduction is you don't interest the reader, and the reader doesn't listen to you, and your wisdom gets lost. Once again, speaking to the English 1A folks, on page 69 in Wilhoit, there's a pretty good intro. From Animal House to Big Brother is the name of the essay. And you'll see this guy lays out a couple of scenarios which might tend to interest a reader. Okay, so try to get an introduction on. And now let me speak to my English 1B folks. There's not a real good example of an essay with a good introduction in your paper, in your textbook. But remember, you have to introduce the stories because you can assume your reader has not read the stories, and you have to introduce the concepts you're going to use to analyze the story. So if you're going to say you're going to use theme to introduce Desiree's Baby, to talk about Desiree's Baby, you can't just start out, I'm going to explore theme in Desiree's Baby. No, that's not going to work. The reader won't care and won't be interested. So you have to back out, and you have to make sure the reader knows something about the story and something about the techniques you're going to use. And then you get to your thesis, in which say, I'm going to analyze, or Desiree's story is Desiree's Baby is a very good use of the technique called theme, or characterization, or setting, or whatever you're going to use. Okay. You can't start with your thesis statement because you risk boring the reader, and you also lose, in your case, 20 points. So you have to get your reader to your thesis. It's a matter of political negotiation, trying to keep the reader interested. So for the folks in the 1B class, there's some stuff in that how-to folder on the forum, or on the resources page. Okay, for everybody, there's a PowerPoint there on common mistakes in thesis statements. Your thesis statement must clearly state your position. But you want to avoid announcing your thesis, and that PowerPoint there is really good. So if you have time in between now and the time the thing is due on Monday, you really ought to look at that thesis statement PowerPoint and the how to write an intro stuff. It won't take you long to look at it, and then make an effort to put an introduction on. There was a reason I didn't give you this at the beginning of the week, because I didn't want people to belabor it. Most writers work from the inside out, and for me and for most writers I know, the introduction and conclusion are the last thing you write, because you don't know where you're going until you get there sometimes. And I've started essays with a beautiful introduction, and then in the writing of the essay takes off in a different direction, and I've got to throw my intro out and write a new one, which wastes time and effort. So you want to typically write from the inside out. Write with what you know and what comes to you easily. Start writing there, and then work out from that. Chances are that's going to be somewhere in the middle of your essay, because as you're writing, you're going to discover more important points and points of lesser importance. So you're going to start in the middle with what you know, and then you're going to work out. And then when the thing is pretty well finished, then you're going to craft your intro and your conclusion and put those on the end so that they predict where the essay is going. All right. So let me review for you. Please use the general questions forum for general questions. First or third person is up to you, but don't be too informal. In academic writing, that's usually not a good idea. If you want to review someone else's draft, you've already done one, you want to do another one, you'll get a little extra credit for it. Uh, if you want some real more focused help, visit the Academic Skills Center. They know what we're doing and they know how to help you. Okay, and then in the process of your final craftsmanship over the weekend, get an intro on the thing. I'm sorry that there aren't any real good examples in either of your textbooks, but if you read the resources I've given you, you get a pretty good idea. Okay, this is a work in progress. I don't expect intros to be perfect, but I am going to be looking for some attempt to introduce the reader. If you think about it, it's like a party. You know, if you have a party and people come in and just stand around, and you as the host of the party don't introduce people to each other, it's going to be a lousy party. If, on the other hand, you take your job as a host and go around and introduce people to each other and get them started talking, then you'll overcome the shyness that a lot of people have, and it'll be a great party. So think about it that way. Your reader doesn't know anything about your topic. He doesn't know anything about the techniques you're going to use. She doesn't know what you're going to talk about. And they're not particularly interested. So if you don't make the effort to introduce them and grab their attention in some way, you're guaranteeing that you won't get listened to. If you try to introduce the reader and the topic and your ideas together in your introduction, then you've got at least a chance. Okay, I think that's all. Hope you're having a great weekend. I'll be around over the weekend, although I've got some stuff to do, but I've been keeping track of you in the forum and reading everything you put up there. All right, so read that stuff on intros. Get an intro done of some kind. I'll recognize whether you have an intro or not. I'll recognize whether you tried or not. Okay, see you later. Bye.